Father, Son, and Violin. A personal life story tells the vivid of Mao's China. Daniel Olson Chen. Dedicated to my parents and all of their generation.
Special acknowledgements.
My special thanks to Ms. Mercedes Larbenz. Without her encouragement and inspiration, hard work in editing, artwork and her publishing assistance, this book would never have been made public. Father, Son, and Violin. Chapter 13, 4 Years as a Construction Worker. 1. A Mysterious Envelope. I left home, at the age of 15, all on my own, until today. After leaving home, I headed straight to Uncle Feng's place. I had nowhere else to go. It was then I confirmed that the sack of musical scores Chu Xiaolin took out of the library was the cause of the whole series of tragedies. Logically, I thought if I returned it to the library I could make a trade for my brother Danson's freedom. No matter how hard I thought, I couldn't figure out why that sack of musical scores suddenly became so important when tons of the same were burnt during the Cultural Revolution. As Uncle Feng had no idea at all what had happened to Chu, I decided to talk to him about it later when things became clearer. According to Chu's words, Uncle Feng placed the sack in front of me. I opened the sack in order to pick out a few urgently needed violin scores. If there were any, I planned to return them after I hand-copied them. During the process, a well-sealed solid brown envelope dropped out from a thick music score. Out of curiosity, I put it in my school bag thinking I would take a look after sorting out the sack. I quickly went through all the scores and books. Excluding the couple of violin exercises I took previously, I found almost nothing was of urgent need, only a violin collection that might be useful later. I started to regret and doubt the value of Chu's doing such a thing for me. I entrusted Uncle Feng to return the sack back to the library. Hearing the news, Chu Xiaolin's Uncle Zhou jumped out of his sick bed and rushed to the library. Delightedly, he opened the sack secretly and soon found the thick music score. To his enormous disappointment, he found the envelope was no longer there. That turned his happiness into madness. His tact, however, told him to conceal his anxiety behind a calm face. Uncle Zhou inquired with Uncle Feng as to my whereabouts. The simple-minded Uncle Feng had no clue what all this was about and so led him to me. At the same time, I was alone at Feng's place gazing at my heartbroken violin parts which made me forgot about the envelope completely. Seeing Uncle Feng come in with Uncle Zhou, I jumped up to escape. Although the abandoned place had no door, the exit was the same size as a door, or as wide as Uncle Zhou's body. With him standing there, I wished I could change myself into a string of wind to flee. Uncle Zhou's eye looked much better though still a little blue. The first words out of his mouth were,
"Did you see an envelope?"
Seeing him stand steady, I backed up a little to a comparatively safe distance and nodded my head meaning, yes. He promptly strode to approach me and eagerly requested,
"Give it to me, quickly."
His action made me feel that envelope might be very valuable. Whatever it was, it must be something of great importance. I counter-questioned him.
"Why should I give it to you? Give me a good reason."
"Because it is mine."
Uncle Zhou moved a step towards me.
"If you move one more step, I swear to you that you will never see your envelope again."
Then Uncle Zhou took a completely unexpected action. He kneeled down on the ground in front of me and begged,
Please give it to me. I'll do anything you want."
Watching this, Uncle Feng was in total confusion. He felt he should do something to ease the situation, so he tried to persuade me.
"If it is his thing, why don't you give it back to him?"
The developing dramatic situation made me more and more confident that the mysterious envelope was a very powerful thing, which was in my hand. I mean in my school bag underneath my buttocks as I relaxed myself on it. I played the suspense.
It's at a secret place.
Okay, take me there. If you do, as I said, anything can be discussed.
Anything?
I confirmed.
Anything, as far as I can do, you name it.
Okay, release my brother, immediately.
I tried it in an orderly tone.
All right, take me there first.
He bargained.
No way, let my brother go first.
This time my tone was non-negotiable.
Okay, I'll do it right away. You wait here, don't leave.
He looked at Uncle Fong for his confirmation.
Don't worry, he has nowhere else to go for a while.
Uncle Fong reassured him. When Uncle Zhou was away, I started to report about Chu Xiaolin, in a version no more than what I heard from my father. Hearing that, Uncle Fong looked very down and heavy. He uttered a few words.
How is the baby girl now?
That was an unknown, I would like to know it very much myself. One thing for sure, she couldn't be very good. Uncle Fong started to spread hay to make me a place to sleep. Suddenly, he stopped and said to me,
I think that, what thing, an envelope isn't it? It may be better to keep it for a while, until things are more clear.
He stopped there. About 2 hours later, Uncle Zhou ran back and gasped out.
Your brother is home, now can we go get my stuff?
With Uncle Feng's wink, I improvised a story.
It's not possible to go there today as the place is too far away.
What?
Uncle Zhou burst out in fury. Uncle Fong tried to calm him down by saying,
Don't worry, the boy is okay. I promise you no one will see your thing.
Uncle Zhou started becoming like a ball leaking air. After being dazed for a moment, he said to Uncle Fong,
If I can take your word? I mean, if you, not the boy, can keep it for me and promise not to open it, it may be safer than in my hands for a while. Actually, I heard about you from my niece Chu Xiaolin.
It's a promise. It won't get into anyone else's hands, and it will not be opened. As I said.
Uncle Fong confirmed it again. After haggling, the temporary result was that I would hand the envelope back to him when I was sure all my family members were safe. Uncle Zhou conceded, on my oath, that I would let Uncle Fong keep it for the time being and never open it nor let it get in anyone else's hands. The irony was that his all-important envelope was only 2 meters away from him, in my school bag right underneath my buns. As soon as Uncle Zhou left, I was all too eager to open the envelope, but was stopped by Uncle Fong.
You promised you wouldn't open it. It says if 4 horses can't chase up a gentleman's words. Trustworthiness is a man's most important quality.
To show my trust to him and my trustworthy words to Uncle Zhou, I handed the envelope over to Uncle Fong. He hesitated for a second, then said,
On second thought, just put it in your school bag like that. It could be a big problem if you lost it somewhere. Besides, he insisted that I keep it for him.
Like that, I handed the envelope, together with 4 years of my life, over to Uncle Fong. My middle school graduation. It was free to stay at Uncle Feng's place. But for every day's bread, more precisely, for every day's rice, I had to start part-time grunt work for Feng's construction company. Being the new boy on the totem pole in a down-to-earth environment, it was very hard for me to balance myself as a spiritual noble in my artistic ivory tower. It was okay during the daytime, but was miserable in the evening, for Uncle Feng's castle was as antique as the age before Edison, who invented electricity. Though following the old tradition of candles could be romantic, they cost money. To Uncle Feng it wasn't much of a problem as he went straight to sleep, sawing logs as soon as it got dark, while I had to count numbers for hours before I could manage to get myself into dreamland. Worse than the lack of electricity was the lack of water at Uncle Feng's residence. This meant I had to do all my personal hygiene and grooming at the construction site. Still, that was not the worst. The biggest problem, above them all, was that I had no place or the time to practice my violin. Seeing me gaze at my broken violin, Uncle Feng suggested that he find me some sesame nails, very small nails, to put the pieces together. His good-hearted idea made my flesh crawl, though I didn't forget to show my appreciation. It was some time later, Ma Xiaomao heard my story and gave me her violin with the head from the violin my aunt bought for me, the one I had repaired for her earlier. Just to mention it, from then on, every time I met Ma, Flute Chen was always there with her, like a full-time bodyguard. About Lu Xiaobing and Wang Shi, their relationship as a pair was made public. With help from Wang, Lu too was busy preparing for the high school entrance exam. I lost my interest in school completely, even though it was close to graduation. My going to school was like a fisherman, 3 days fishing alternating with 2 days drying the net. Gradually, my life got into a new routine. I went to school, when I did, in the morning and sweated at the construction site in the afternoon. As soon as I was off work, I practiced my violin for a short while in wherever place was available to me, at the workplace, at Feng's place, or in a park. In the evening, I finally found the place for a pastime by taking part in the rehearsal of the Changsha workers' propaganda team. Doing just as an old Chinese saying, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Soon, I became the concertmaster of the amateur orchestra and was flattered to be the #1 violin player among the amateurs in town, even playing solo from time to time. Though all of this did put me in a good mood and gave a certain degree of satisfaction, I didn't forget my declaration, not only #1 amateur player of Changsha City but also the #1 professional violinist in the entire Hunan province. I, as a 15-year-old, was living a life mostly among adults. With a life like that, a few months later, I said farewell to my middle school. About the destiny of my other former Mao teammates, Captain Li led quite a number of them to an army propaganda team, which was considered the best way out of school at that time. Although Ma Xiaomao so much wanted to follow Li, she couldn't owing to her bad family social class origin, in addition to her withdrawing from the team before graduation. Above all, her persistent chasing of Li resulted in unrequited love, making the vast world, countryside, the only place for her to go. On the other hand, Flute Chen's name was already on Li's list, yet he gave up the honor of his own free will. Hearing the people in Xinjiang were good at singing and dancing, Flute Chen put some effort on going through back doors to keep Ma from going to the vast world, mobilizing her going to the Xinjiang Army Development Construction, together with him. Lu and Wang both passed the high school entrance exams and pursued their studies and love, at a higher level. Since leaving home I had little contact with my family. All that I knew was Mom went back home after months of an inconclusive investigation into her political past, continuing her role as one of, promoting production. Father was demoted for unknown reasons, and where, what and how he was serving the party was also unknown. My little brother Dan Hen worked very diligently and enduringly with his training, becoming a formal member of the provincial acrobatics troupe. My elder brother Danson didn't manage to get into the high school. In order to not lose his urban resident status, in China, urban residence registration and rural residence registration are social classes at opposite ends of the ladder. To change a rural residence registration to an urban residence registration may not be as difficult as a man flying to the moon, but certainly as difficult as a Chinese immigrating to the United States, if not more so. With the help of his teacher, Danson went as a 3-year volunteer to build railroads. As for me, I was directly recommended by Uncle Feng and became a formal worker for the Changsha Construction Company. Three. Farewell to Teacher Li. Wang Shi told me that Teacher Li once visited wondering why I was no longer taking violin lessons from him. I guess I did so for fear of spreading my trouble so widely as to encompass him too. Wang described the scene to me, that in front of my home, Teacher Li met not me, but my father. Father did not invite Teacher Li in, but tailed him to the church. Father's original intention must have been to find Teacher Li's location in order to demolish the nest that poisons the youth. Surprisingly, Teacher Li wasn't afraid or angry about being followed. Instead, he led my father all the way and politely invited him into the church through the back door. Facing Jesus, by conditioned reflex of the everyday routine prayer during Father's university days, came a flash back in his heart,
Our Father who art in heaven.
That miraculous power stopped Father's intention of troubling Teacher Li, instead expressing his hope with delicacy. Hoping that Teacher Li will stop doing things with good intentions resulting in bad outcomes, or to put it more clearly, leading the youth astray. Teacher Li did not dispute but commented, "Who is astray? Time will tell for itself." One day Wang came to see me during my evening rehearsal of the workers' propaganda team. He passed a message to me that Teacher Li wanted 10 of his best students to perform Violin Unison, Xinjiang Spring, the only violin piece to survive during the Cultural Revolution. I accepted the invitation right away, for I knew there was a solo section in the middle of the piece, and I, said to be the #1 amateur player in town, took it as, grounded upon conceit, that I would be the one to play the solo part. Nevertheless, it wasn't until the very moment before the performance that I learned Teacher Li had recommended a sheepish girl called Tang, supposedly the worst player in the group, to do the show-off job in order to infuse her with courage and self-confidence. On stage as the moment approached, seeing Tang shaking with hesitation, I exploited this excuse, stepping ahead to cut a smart figure. After the performance, when everyone had gone, Teacher Li asked me to his home. Though I had all the excuses prepared, he didn't say a word about it, nor did he talk about the meeting with my father. Though he acted as if nothing had happened, and started to play a violin duo from home and with me just like the old days, I couldn't help apologizing for my father's rudeness as a way to show my regret for the thoughtless action during the concert. Teacher Li said with a smile,
"Your father, just like the vast others today, is just a lamb who has lost his way. How could they be blamed for what they are doing when they don't even know what they are doing? Only the great love of our Lord could affect them, lighten up their heart. Someday they will reach their cognition of all the wrongdoings in their past. I will never stop leading the youth to our Lord because of some accusations. Being God's servant, this is what I'm made for."
Comparing Teacher Li's treatment towards my wrongdoing with my father's, I was truly touched. But I became clearly aware that I was like some kind of poison or root of trouble in that society, and whoever was in touch with me would be in touch with trouble. I made myself an awkward excuse that his teaching method no longer fit me, and expressed my wish to end the teacher/student relationship. Again, he praised me for being much more thoughtful and sensible than before instead of being disappointed with me.
But no excessive worry about me is needed. I'm safe with my Lord, as I always have been, and always will be,"
Teacher Li said. On the way out of Teacher Li's room, he took me into the church. Facing God, he prayed for me. He asked the Lord to light my heart and warm my body all my life. He also begged the Lord to send a brother or a sister to my side to lead and assist me wherever I might go. He even prayed for the forgiveness of my father. I was speechless, not a thank you, nor a sorry. With an empty brain, I silently had my farewell with Teacher Li, the enlightenment of my music, as well as how to be a decent human being. 4. Encountering Teacher U. From the amateur orchestra I heard a rumor that an excellent violinist named Yu Boping was demoted from the National Army singing and dancing troupe to the Hunan Provincial Beijing Opera as the concertmaster of the orchestra owing to a wrongdoing in his private life. As private scandal was thought to be the most shameful sin among our Chinese, though we like it very much, Yu's unpopularity at his workplace was not hard to imagine. With a tiny hope, I recklessly went to see Teacher Yu all by myself. Unexpectedly, after hearing only one piece of my violin playing, he accepted me to be his student, the only student in my life, he said. After the elated mood subsided, I finally got my feet back on the ground. I started to question whether it was his need to be needed in his time of adversity, or did I, the little 9 brother, really have some talent, or perhaps was it both? Teacher Yu gave me quite some homework at the first meeting. He lent me a violin method, Road, and asked me to hand copy a few exercises for the next lesson. Finally, he made a bit of an embarrassing suggestion that I take a shower and change my clothes, particularly my socks, before I come for the next lesson, as
my wife is slightly delicate and fussy,
said with a tone full of love for his wife. By then I noticed a photograph of a very pretty woman with elegance, placed on the piano. Looking at the small, wizened, and pale-appearing Teacher Yu, I just didn't understand why he needed another woman when he possessed such a beautiful wife. The man's mania of having women other than one's wife, or as the Chinese say, occasionally, wild herbs smell better than the home flowers, took me years to fully comprehend. 5. My violin stage on construction scaffold. Since I had formally become a worker of the Changsha Construction Company, I moved out of Uncle Feng's place and started a life on my own at the workers' dormitory. The so-called dormitory was actually a shed with lots of bunk beds. There was no registration, no management, and no charge. As far as there were beds available, anyone could occupy them. That is to say, that all of my property had to be concentrated within the size of a bed. Good thing that wasn't much trouble for me, as I had almost no property, not even a ragged suitcase like the little David Copperfield when he ran away from the blacking factory to seek his aunt. All that I possessed were 2 pairs of old shoes and a few tattered clothes. As for the violin, that was a part of my skin and I wore it wherever I went. To practice my violin at the dormitory was unthinkable, therefore my workplace, the construction site, remained the only available location. Every day when working hours were over and the others went home, I would hide myself in a half-finished room to practice. Sometimes I got so inspired I would climb on the highest spot of the scaffolding. Facing the beautiful twilight and infinite space, with all my feeling and emotion, I would enjoy my playing as much as I liked and the music pieces I loved. Recalling the scene, it was somewhat romantic. If it appeared in a movie, it would be a moving and touching moment. Gradually, I discovered the number in my audience was growing, for as soon as I started playing, more and more windows would open, and people were standing by those windows. In the window closest to me stood the charming daughter of the army representative. By that time, army officers were sent to be in charge of all local working units. It was called the military control period. Whenever the girl appeared, she always reminded me of Chu Xiaolin, which changed my happy violin music to melancholy. Just to mention, if I wanted, I could have found out about the situation with Xiaolin and Langsha through just a little effort, but I guess I chose not to as the result could be fearful. In parallel to the growing number of fans, there were also an increasing number of enemies. An outstanding one was the foreman Peng. I was given a derogatory title, Young Master 9, by my workmates. No work group wanted me as I didn't fit in, wearing gloves even on the hottest day in the summer, as people said, and I truly did. In addition, from time to time I was out of sight, hiding somewhere hand-copying music scores, the homework teacher you gave me. One day I was caught doing my usual business, hand-copying music scores at my secret spot. The foreman Peng seized my music score and was about to tear it. I raised a spade over my head and shouted,
Dare you do it, and I'll split your head in two.
That really scared Foreman Peng, but being too full of shame to show his weakness, he very gingerly tore a small corner of the music score. I threw the spade away, stepped forward and gave him a punch on the face. My reckless action caused him to swallow 2 teeth, 2 decayed loose teeth. That brought big trouble, big enough to hold a work unit accusation meeting. In the meeting, someone suggested that I should be fired at once. The suggestion was immediately supported by a thunder of applause. When the meeting chairman requested a vote by the raising of hands, Uncle Feng stood up. He said,
There is no doubt that violence, no matter who does it, is crude and wrong and should be accused, criticized and even punished. But I'm the one who introduced the little 9 brother here. Therefore I should at least be held responsible for half of his wrongdoing. However, to kick him out is equal to pushing him in a worse direction. That does not correspond with Chairman Mao's teaching, to cure illness and save life. The little 9 brother is, after all, a boy below 16, he deserves a second chance. If we sack every young man who acts on his impulsive temper, how many would be left working for the socialist construction? And if the result is simply to fire him, why did we all bother to come here? My fellow workers, please, give him a second chance. This is the only thing I ask.
The meeting result was that I should compensate Foreman Peng's medical fees and a sum equal to his 10 days' wage. I went to Uncle Feng wanting to say a few lines of gratitude but was mercilessly scolded by him.
I don't care about losing face, I don't have much face anyway. But you are young, you need to work and fight for your own face. Maybe someday you can eat with your violin, but you are a worker now, so look and act like one.
Though I kept my jaw moving, in my heart I knew I owed him a big one and felt what he said to me was right and honest. So I made up my mind to make a radical change from that day on. About a year later, with a lot of effort, I did change and was gradually accepted and liked by more and more co-workers. After all, construction work and violin performing are 2 totally incompatible fields. The fingers of a construction worker are as rough as steel files. How could they dance and flit sensitively on violin strings? If my life went on like that, how could I reach my dream of becoming a professional violinist, the king of music? No or yes, I must work out a way. It was at that moment, while trying to think of some way out, I fell from a 3-story scaffold, all the way down to the ground. That became my way out of the sweaty construction site. I was sent to a hospital. Though there was no major damage to my bones, the scratches and blood looked awful. I declared that I suffered from a fear of heights. Uncle Feng preferred to believe it, and requested the company transfer me to a cement product working unit, where more than half of the workers were women. After that, the work I did was much more relaxed, lighter and stable, and more importantly, there was no more laughing about hands covered with gloves. I at once felt happy and sort of satisfied. I worked harder than ever and a year later was even appointed the leader of a group of 6 workers. Slowly, I got used to the life and even started to think I was destined to be a worker. The passion to pursue the violin got weaker and weaker. In the end, taking violin lessons from teacher you became more like a habit or formality. About my music activities at the amateur orchestra, after being the concertmaster for quite a period of time, I felt somewhat fed up and that it was a waste of time. I quit it for good with no excuse. Now, I sit in my house by a big bright window looking outside at my garden, flashing back on the first half of my life struggling. Each time I reached a goal, I would start to feel bored and lost. Just like climbing a hill, it's a great challenge and fun to look at the top and climb, but as soon as you set foot on top of the hill, you discover the place you stand is tiny and sharp, and surrounded by bigger, higher rolling hills blocking your view to the other world. In fact, the same applies to almost everything. For example, you hunt for a used car, all the fun is in the process of looking in the papers, internet, whatever source of information you might have, checking the make, year, kilometers, ABS, CD, MD, TV, Navi, etc. But when you hand over your money, you also hand over all your fun and excitement at the same time. One more example is that when we were little we all looked forward to becoming adults, but now we are adults, so what? This taught me that every time I reach a goal, I must look for a new goal. This is my understanding of life goes on, otherwise, I would feel my life had stopped, was terminated, and see death lying ahead of me. Therefore I have lived my life, and will go on living my life of endless climbing. When I write here I suddenly seem to understand why religion is so powerful. It's because it gives us consistent and continuous hope but never actually lets us reach that hope in our lifetime. Six, Chinese teacher Liang and English teacher Din. After quitting the amateur orchestra I had more time for myself. Besides practicing violin and reading books, I still had some surplus time and energy in the evenings. It was in that time I made myself a friend named Liang. We soon got along with each other well. By talking to him, I learned his father was a Chinese teacher and mother an English teacher, both teaching at the Changsha No. 2 middle school. As teachers, the only thing they wanted to do was teach, which was not a very popular thing to do in that era. The parents organized their own private evening classes, free of charge for those who wanted to study. All education was free at that time. I immediately became an active member of both the Chinese and English classes, studying both languages very hard. In fact, at the time, I had no idea what my studies of Chinese and English were for. While today, when I write in both languages, I appreciate and value the foundation of both languages they laid and helped build. Thank you teachers Liang and Din, wherever you might be now. Seven, Farewell My Virginity. In the evening study group, I encountered Wu Zhanghua, a girl 2 years older than me. Everyone's eyes would meet her two full-figured breasts before her not bad-looking face or slender body. Here is how she became my first sexually involved girlfriend. It was an afternoon in which she took me to her home. She asked me to turn my face away from her. When I was asked to turn my face back, she was completely nude. My mind went totally blank while my body was trembling. My little thing, wait, by that time might not be little anymore, was growing bigger. But the skin was still not peeled, therefore great pain, as always, occurred. As I mentioned, Zhanghua was 2 years older and she worked in the medical field, therefore her knowing more about adult affairs was easy to understand. Seeing me have no reaction, she felt a bit offended or disappointed. When I shamefully told her that I was in pain, she helped me lower my pants. When she saw my part, she looked very happy. "You're a virgin," she said. Her following action really shocked me, as she was trying to put my thing in her mouth. "This is the place I make water. How could you put such a dirty thing in your mouth? It's not healthy," I said. Zhanghua couldn't help laughing, but quickly adjusted her attitude with a sort of excitement and the kindness of love. She went away and was soon back with a big teacup of warm water. At that time there were no bathrooms in almost all Chinese households, therefore we could not wash ourselves before. She put my thing into the cup and gently washed it. Later I learned that that big teacup was her father's. Next, she helped me peel my thing just like peeling a ripe banana, little by little. I was in great pain but excited at the same time. Once the banana was peeled, the pain was pretty much gone, remaining was the increase in pleasure. By that time I could not help but push her down on the bed, face down, as that was the only way and the only thing I knew about sex. I tried to push myself into her back hole but she turned over. She laughed this time for real, and remarked,
Surprise, surprise, you have such a fondness, but let's do it normally first.
She opened her legs. That was the first time I knew I had an option. Seeing her front gate, I started to feel fear. I was, after all, an 18-year-old virgin, although much self-practice had been done to fight in a real battlefield. That was my maiden voyage. Secondly, it was the inappropriate environment. You see, it was in her parents' home. What if one of her parents finished work early and popped in? We wouldn't be able to get my pants on in time. Therefore, in spite of the fact that she had her door open wide, welcoming me in, I didn't know how to accept the invitation. When she realized she had to take me and lead me into her world, I heard the noise of footsteps. It ended up being someone else just passing in the corridor but resulted in me injecting right in front of her doorway. That was my first real experience, or the first rehearsal for many later. But for me, it was a farewell to my virginity. Failure of farewell to Mimi's virginity. Although I had no contact with my family since I walked away from home, I knew well what was going on with my folks as Mimi came to see me at my work from time to time. One day when my dormitory workmates were all absent, I boasted to Mimi that my banana was ripe, the skin was peeled and ready for tasting. And above all, I knew the right place to taste the banana that wouldn't cause any pain. Mimi gave no resistance, not even an excuse of, the rice will burn, this time, only closed her eyes as tightly as she could. When I was ready to break her gate defense, she suddenly opened her eyes and asked me a question so hard that it blocked me from penetrating anything further. She asked,
"When are we going to get married?"
She paused, and explained,
"Because if we do this, we're going to have a child, you know."
That was it. We stopped there forever, and Mimi's words, "If we do this, we're going to have a child," affected my life as an adult, for many, many years to come. A life-changing phone call. It was just another afternoon after having worked for the construction factory for 4 years, I received a unique phone call from the company head office telling me to report immediately to the office.
I don't think I can. You see, I have to work overtime today in order to finish the cement fences on time for the Hume Provincial Zoo Panda House. It's an important political task.
I replied.
It is more important that you come here at once.
The phone said.
If not, will you sack me?
I insisted.
No need to sack you. You already no longer belong to our company. The details will be told when you are here. Come quickly, all the leaders are here waiting for you. Otherwise I'll send someone to get you.
What?
The phone call was cut off. What on earth could be the problem? I worked hard and very well lately. The relationship with my coworkers had improved greatly. Everything was going well and smooth. Why did the company want to kick me out?